So we last left off connecting our application with Redux using React Redux. And what we're going to do in this screencast is add the React router and move our new to-do form outside of the to-do list component. So what we're going to do first is make sure that we install React Router. So let's stop the server. We're going to npm install React Router DOM. And we're going to be using this for a little bit of client-side routing. And we're going to have to make sure that we first set this up inside of our index.js. So we'll give this a second to load. Make sure you have this dependency, otherwise none of the stuff that we're going to do is going to work. So this looks good. Let's go npm start so we can keep this up and running. And then we'll go and edit this code in Sublime. So just as a quick recap, what we can do here, we can eat, we can sleep. And when this loads, let's try this again. We can eat, we can sleep, and we can delete these to-dos. This is all being connected with React and Redux. So in Sublime, the first thing we want to go to is our index.js. And what we need to do here is bring in React Router. So what we're going to do is import browser router from React Router DOM. And this is the router that we're going to be using. This allows us to fall back nicely and not have that hash in our URL. The question you might be asking is, how do we fit browser router and provider together? And the answer is you always put the browser router inside of your provider. So provider is the top level component that wraps browser router, which wraps our application. So let's head over to our app.js and add a little bit of navigation in this application. What we're going to do first is import a few things from React Router DOM. We're going to import link, route, and redirect. This way, when we go to the root route, we can simply redirect to our route for /todos. We're going to make a couple routes for /todos and /todos/new, and that'll be the form that renders that new to-do. So inside of here, instead of rendering the to-do list component, let's render a couple links. We'll make a paragraph tag with a link tag. This is how we make an anchor tag with React Router DOM. And we pass in the prop of to. This is going to go to /todos. And here we'll say, see my to-dos. We'll also make another link, but this one's going to be for to-dos/new. And here we'll say add a to-do. What we want to also specify here are some routes. So we're going to use that route component. And inside, we can make sure this is a self-closing tag. We'll give this a path of /todos. And when we go to /todos, render a component by the name of to-do list. And notice here that we're importing to-do list, so that looks good. What we also want is another route. And here we'll say, if you go exactly to /. What do we want to do? Well, let's render a component. And the reason why we want to do this render is so that we can redirect right off the bat. So we are going to run a function which redirects. We'll use that redirect component. We're going to redirect. But where are we redirecting to? We'll simply redirect to /todos. So we'll save that and make sure that our syntax is proper. So just to recap what we've done here, we brought in a link, which is simply our way of making anchor tags with React Router. We brought in the route component so we can add some routes to our application. And we brought in some redirecting so that if you go to this path /, it will redirect to /todos. And when you go to /todos, we render the to-do list component. So this looks like all the work we need to do in our app.js. Inside of our to-do list, we're going to need to do a bit more work. So we're really not going to do much with Redux right now. We're simply just going to put React Router in this application and see how it works alongside Redux. So I'll close these two and we'll go to to-do list. Now what's interesting about to-do list is we first want to take out all of this logic related to adding a new to-do. So in order to make that happen, we're actually going to make a new component that we'll call new to-do form.js. And inside of here, we're going to bring in a lot of that logic that we had before in our to-do list. We're going to start by importing React and destructure component from React. And then we're going to make sure we export a default class of new to-do form, and it extends component. Now inside of here, what are we going to do? We're going to take a lot of the logic that we have from our to-do list. We're going to start by simply taking this form right here and putting it inside of a render method in here. So we're going to render, inside we're going to return, and here we're going to simply put in that entire form. And inside this form, we're going to have a handle submit, so we're going to have to move quite a few of these things. We're also going to need some kind of constructor. So in our constructor, we're going to pass in some props. We're going to call super on those props, and then we're going to take some of these event listeners that we had in the parent component. What are those event listeners that we want to take? Well, we're going to want handle submit and handle change as well as some state. Because remember, in this form, we're going to be changing some information. So what else do we want? If we're going to get handle submit and handle change, well, let's go grab those as well. So we're going to get handle submit and we're going to get handle change, and we can actually move that away from our to-do list component. So if we look here, we're simply going to have handle submit and handle change. We'll move that to our new to-do form. So what we're doing here is simply isolating the new to-do form in its own component. We're going to have to change some more things in the to-do list, but for now, this should be okay. So what do we want to make sure we have? We have a handle submit, handle change. We want to make sure that we have the text, and when you're typing, that gets changed in our state. What we want to do, though, is not actually call add to do inside of this new to-do form. I don't want to connect the new to-do form to Redux. I just want the to-do list to be connected to Redux. We call that a container. So what we're going to do here as well is pass in another prop. We're going to take out this right here and this right here. We're going to pass in a prop called add to do. Better yet, let's just call this handle add. And inside of here, we're going to make a function called handle add. And all that handle add is going to do is simply accept some kind of value. So we'll pass in some kind of value. And all we're going to do here is call this.props.addToDo. Remember, this right here is simply a function that dispatches an action. So we're going to call val with whatever we pass in. What else do we need to change? Well, let's go back to our new to-do form and make sure that it looks good. Instead of calling this.props.addToDo, we are going to make sure that we pass down a prop, and we can call this something like handle submit. And inside of this.props.handleSubmit, we'll pass that in, we'll reset, and finally, we'll make sure that we redirect. So this.props.history.push. Where is this coming from? This is going to come from the React router. We have to make sure that using the React router, we actually render this new to-do form. So there are a lot of moving parts here, but what we're trying to do is isolate the logic from our to-do list into our new to-do form. So back in our to-do list, how are we going to render that specific new to-do form? Well, we're going to have to change a couple things. Let's get this debugger out of here. And what we'll do is simply keep this same to-dos with remove to-do and task and val. This is going to stay exactly the same. But what we return is going to be a little bit different. We're going to return a couple things. First, we're going to need to import route from React Router DOM, because we need a route not only for our to-dos, but also for the new to-do form. So we'll set up a couple routes. We'll simply say, let's make a route. We'll make sure this div wraps everything. And inside of here, this is going to be an exact path for /todos. And when that happens, we are going to render a component. What component are we going to render? Well, very simply, it's going to be a div with these to-dos. So all we're going to say is that whenever we go to this path /todos, we are going to render a div with all of those to-dos. Let's make sure we get that opening div and get that closing div as well towards the end. So all we're doing here is rendering those to-dos. Inside of that list, we're simply going to print out all the to-dos that we have. But what do we want to do here in this return as well? Well, we want to make sure everything is wrapped in a div because we need another route as well. What is that other route that we need? We need another route that goes to to-dos /new. So here, once again, this is self-closing. We're going to make a route that goes to /todos /new. And when you go to /todos /new, we're going to render some component. What component are we going to render? Well, we're going to pass in some kind of props. Why do we want these props? Remember, we want to use the React router in this component. We want to be able to get access to history on this.props. So what we're going to render is the new to-do form. We're going to pass in all of these props. And we'll pass in another prop called handle submit. And it's going to be whatever this.handleAdd does. So there are a lot of moving parts here. We want to make sure as well that we pass in the method binding, which it looks like we've done correctly. So there could be some mistakes here, but what I really just want to make sure that we do is first ensure that we have some correct syntax. So let's save this. Looks like we have an issue right here in our new to-do form. We have to make sure that this new to-do form closes as well. So what we've done is first removed our new to-do form from inside of here. And once again, we're not going to get very far if we don't import that new to-do form. So let's make sure as well we import new to-do form. We can take a quick look in the browser and see what's happening here. Ooh, looks like we're not getting much from render inside of our to-do list. So if we take a look at our render method, we want to make sure we return all this information right here. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far. Let's go take a look here, and we should be able to see our to-dos and add our to-dos. Looks like there's some kind of semicolon just hanging out there. Let's make sure we get rid of that. So if we see our to-dos, we shouldn't see much. And if we add a to-do, we should be able to eat, and we should be able to jump between adding a to-do and seeing our to-dos. If we go back to add and go back to see, we still see the one that we've added. Let's go home. Let's go back to see my to-dos, add a to-do. If we ever go back to the root route, it's going to redirect us right away to to-dos. We're going to lose the to-dos we have because everything is in memory, but it looks like right now we can eat, and right after we submit this, we redirect back to /to-dos. So let's go back and go through what we've done in this application. The first thing we did is bring in React Router. Notice that when using React Router and Redux, we wrap browser router with provider. So provider always comes first. That's the React Redux component. We then pass in browser router, and then finally our app component. So let's go take a look at this app component. Inside of here, we simply have a couple links to to-dos and to to-dos /new. What we're doing right here is simply saying, when you go to /to-dos, show the to-do list component. And when you go to this path right here, which is /, redirect to /to-dos. There are some things you could take out here. We might not need all of these routes, but this should get us what we need so far. Inside of our to-do list component, what we did is we completely removed our to-do form from this list. We've isolated that component to be its own component, which is always nice. That form was a bit unnecessary to be placed inside of the to-do list, so it's good that we made it its own component. Inside of the to-do list, this is the component that we connect to Redux. We're going to grab some Redux state. We're then going to render a couple routes. We're going to render the to-dos component if we're at the specific route. And we're going to add a new route for to-do /new. And when you go to to-do /new, we're going to render the new to-do form with all of these props. Why do we bring in all of these props? Well, because inside of our new to-do form, we want to be able to redirect. So this comes from the props that we've passed down with React Router. So this will allow us to redirect. We could use another component called with router to do that, but this is a much nicer way to handle it. Inside of our new to-do form, we have a lot of similar code. We're simply going to listen for a change, for a submit. We're going to reset form values, and all we've added really are these two lines right here. Instead of directly connecting this component to Redux and making it what we call a container, we're just going to pass down a prop from to-do list. And inside of to-do list, that's where we're going to do our Redux manipulation. So in this application, we've added React Router. We now have Redux and React and the React Router to connect everything together. So we built a single page application with a little bit of routing. What we're going to do in the next video is actually shift and build a very simple backend. We're going to create a Node application that allows us to add to-dos, to get our to-dos, and to delete to-dos. So we're going to move completely away from some React and Redux. We're going to shift to building a simple backend. And then in the last screencast, we're going to put it all together and introduce a way to write asynchronous actions. I'll see you in the next screencast.